Welcome to Real World iOS Projects, an introductory course to both iOS development and the Swift programming language.
Before we begin, let me introduce myself. My name's Jonathan Crook. I've been a professional Swift and Objective-C developer since 2010. During that time, I've mostly been developing for iOS-based devices, the iPhone, iPad, and watchOS. Before I began developing professionally, I worked in education. I hope that I can bring this experience to teaching you about Swift and the iOS ecosystem. We'll introduce this course and describe the approach it will take to getting you started on the road to success as a world-class iOS app developer. In this course, we'll be taking you through the steps of developing 3 beautiful native iOS apps: a notepad, a web browser, and an iTunes movie feed browser. You'll learn the key patterns and components used to develop these apps, ready to get started bringing your own ideas to life. Here are some more details of how this course is organized. In Section 1, we'll quickly introduce you to the Xcode integrated development environment. We'll install it from the Mac App Store and give you a quick tour of its key features. With that done, we'll be ready right away to get started implementing our first app, WebBrowse, a simple custom native web browser. In Section 3, we'll be moving on to implementing Noted, a simple notepad app that stores text notes to your device's storage. In Section 4, our third and final app will be iTunes Movies, a beautiful browser for the iTunes Top Movies feed. Once you've completed these apps, you should have learnt enough to get yourself started developing your own apps. Let's discuss the few prerequisites for taking this course. First of all, this course does not teach programming fundamentals, so you should have some experience with another modern object-oriented programming language, such as Java, C#, C++, Python, Ruby, or similar. In order to develop using Xcode, it's essential that you have a Mac computer. You don't need to have the latest hardware. Any model since about 2010 should be enough to get you started. And even earlier is okay, as long as you can run an Xcode 9 or later. Of course, you'll need a good internet connection to download Xcode, which is a very large application. Also, our web browser and iTunes movie apps also require networking. Finally, an iOS hardware device such as an iPhone or iPad is not required for this course. We'll be doing all of our development using the software simulator bundled with Xcode, which is the tool all iOS developers use for most of their development time. Of course, if you'd like to run the apps we build on a hardware device, then you can certainly do so, but this topic won't be covered in this introductory course. Before we get started, let's finish up by discussing the approach we'll be taking in this course. The first and most crucial point about this course is that we'll be moving fast. Rather than explaining theory and Swift language syntax first, we'll be learning by example. That said, there are a few key iOS and Swift concepts that we can't escape giving an introduction first, and we'll be doing that. Otherwise, we'll be launching straight into showing you how these small apps are made by example. Because we won't be taking time to explain everything, it's very important to note the points about accessing documentation resources in the next section. Professional developers especially spend a lot of time looking at documentation in order to understand the APIs they use, and you need to do the same. With respect to iOS application design, we'll be using the most standard Apple-supported pattern, Model View Controller. This is the key pattern under which the iOS Cocoa Touch frameworks are designed and is therefore the best to use as an introduction. That said, these patterns are not always the optimal to be used, particularly with larger applications. This course should be considered an introduction to iOS development, and there is a lot more to learn about architecting large and complex apps. In the final section of this course, we'll guide you to where you can learn more about this once you've become proficient in MVC design. We've designed our use of Swift around developers who have experience with other modern languages, but may be 100% new to Swift. Therefore, we have intentionally chosen syntax structures that should be the most familiar looking for those coming from those languages. So again, we won't always be using the most optimal patterns. Swift is a reasonably large language and has a number of powerful and expressive patterns that can improve your code. In this course, we'll be keeping it simple, however. Again, in the final section, we'll guide you towards where you can learn more about those features once you've mastered the basics. We don't want to spend a lot of time explaining Swift's more advanced concepts in this course. You can learn about those once you're up and running. Finally, whilst we want to keep things simple in this course, this doesn't mean we'll be avoiding teaching professional iOS development tips and tricks. We'll be including as many as we possibly can. Okay, so we're ready to get started.